morning, good afternoon, good evening, and wherever you are sitting today, and welcome to this information session on quality assurance requirements for health products financed through a global fund grants. You can listen to this webinar in English, French, and Spanish. Please click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen to select the language. We invite all attendees to enter their questions in the chat during the session. We'll collect these questions and address them during the Q&A. Please also note that the session will be recorded, and by joining the session, participants consent to sharing their personal data, particularly how your username displays on Zoom. The presentation is already available on the Global Fund website, and we will publish the recording soon after the sessions. I will now give the floor to Olivier Ducamp, Senior Manager in the Quality Assurance and Compliance team, for the opening remarks. Thank you, and over to you, Olivier.
Thank you. Sorry for this. Good morning for some of you, good afternoon for the others, and welcome to this information session for PRs and LFAs on the quality assurance requirements for health products. So as mentioned, I'm Olivier Ducamp. I'm heading actually the Quality Assurance and Compliance team at the Global Fund. First, I would like to thank everyone and each of you for your participation, and the Global Fund QA members, as well as our comms colleagues, for the great efforts made in preparing for this session. We have more than 100 participants attending this session, including actually, Global Fund Secretariat participants. To put some context and frame this session, please let me remind that during the last two board meetings in November last year and in April this year, the Global Fund board approved the revision of the whole quality assurance policy framework, which includes the amendment and the restatement of the quality assurance policy for pharmaceutical products, as well as the quality assurance policy for medical devices, including in vitro diagnostics and core personal protective equipments, and as well approved a new quality assurance policy for vector control products and related equipment. So quite a lot of changes, and we are lucky to have actually 90 minutes together to drive you through the requirements of those modified and new policies. We will start with a 55-minute presentation addressing an overview of the QA requirements for health products, the quality assurance system for grant recipients, and the detailed requirements associated with the procurement of the health products, before moving forward with 35 minutes Q&A and feedback survey session. So please take a deep breath, and without further delay, I give the floor to Alain Prat, who is actually the manager for QA policy and governance in the QA and compliance team at the Global Fund, to drive us through the next slides of the presentation. Please enjoy.
Thanks, Olivier, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I hope you hear me clear and loud. Thanks to all. Let's go quickly to this brief overview. Next slide, please. So the session, I think, is tailored for the principal recipient.
Alain, you are on mute. Sorry for this.
No, we can hear Alain very well.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Sorry. So this session is tailored for representative of principal recipient of Global Food Funds, and also representative of our local fund agent. As mentioned by Olivier, I think the objective is to present you the quality assurance applicable requirement to hold the health products procured with Global Fund resources. Next slide, please. Yes, what is important probably for you to also understand is that these different quality assurance requirements cover all the different steps of the product life cycle, from the design, the manufacturing by the suppliers, the registration by national regulatory authorities or by stringent regulatory authorities, the selection of the products, procurement, importation, storage, distribution, dispensing and use, vigilance, market surveillance, and maintenance, and what we call end of life. So I think this is, I don't want to go into the details of all these different steps, but this should be I think the overarching life cycle that you will see along the presentation. And some of the QA requirements will be maybe more dedicated to certain areas, but in theory, all our QA requirements are covering this life cycle. Next slide. What also is interesting and important to consider is the complex environment in which we are operating. We mentioned the suppliers, we mentioned the regulators, we mentioned also the national regulators, and between all this, I would say, environment, among all this environment, there is multiple actors. So the regulators approve the products, as you know. We consider this approval. The SOQA produce a list of eligible products based on the information collected. And then this is used for the PR, and via the country team and HPM, they will, through this information, be able to identify what are the products they can procure which are eligible. Then when you go to the country dimension, there is the principal recipients, but also the national regulatory authority, which is the authority managing the quality of the products. The Ministry of Health also has importance, designing the policy and also looking at the whole health system. Disease program, which are vertical entity in each country. And after, depending on the country, we have other organizations such like Quality Control Lab or Vigilance Center or other entity. And we have also the procurement side, where we have the UN procurement or procurement service agent that are procuring globally the goods. It can be also local procurement agent, and these go towards the patient via central or regional or health facilities. So we have tried to simplify it, but probably we have, each time we present this, we have some new connection that we have missed. But just to state that this is a very complex environment in which we have to navigate. Next slide, please. So what is important is probably to fix the different regulatory authorities which are referenced in the Global Fund policy. I mentioned in the previous slide, the National Regulatory Authority, which is owning the responsibility of the quality, safety, efficacy of the products in the country in which we are providing the products. We call the stringent regulatory authorities because in some more mature settings, there is already existing robust regulators on which the Global Fund decide historically to rely on. This is the same for the WHO listed authority. That is a new framework that has been set up by WHO to replace time after time the concept of stringent regulatory authorities. And for medical device, in vitro diagnostic, we have also the regulators which are more specific to this type of products, which are grouped under the naming of the founding members of the Global Harmonization Task Force. This is also remaining in the medical device and in vitro diagnostic policy, but time after time, later on, it should be replaced by the concept of the WHO listed authority. We have our internal mechanism within the fund, the expert review panel that you will know a little bit more later on. We are also relying on the WHO pre-qualification program, who assess the health products, inspect the facilities, and provide a listing of the products which they consider adequate for procurement by UN agency, including the funds. We have some we have set up also some specific mechanism in case of emergency. And we decided as the fund to consider WHO emergency use listing. I mentioned the stringent regulatory authorities. This is also just to show that we are also recognizing the emergency procedure set up by the SRA. Next slide, please. Here, important to set up the scene, and we try to provide a kind of different dimension of the complex environment that we have set up before. Product dimension, pharmaceutical, medical device, in vitro diagnostics, personal protective equipment, and vector control products. Each PR may not have to procure all these type of products, of course. So this is the overall umbrella of the products category that we cover. The disease dimension, of course, and I think we have the HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, which are the core of our mandate. We had to deal with the COVID-19, unfortunately. And also we procure co-infection and comorbidities products. The manufacturing act supply, this is related to the product life cycle that I mentioned before, so no need to go in the details. Next slide. So what is important maybe here for you is to have also the picture of the QA documentation and how it is articulate. The quality assurance policy approved by the board is the overarching, describing the high level QA requirement. All these will be translated the health product guide. Historically, we call this also the PSM guide. And all this can be also translated in other documentation. We issue and we plan to issue even more briefing notes. It's kind of guidance document, very operational. We issue from time to time QA information notice with the objective is to inform PR on a specific safety, efficacy, or quality issues. We also consider, depending on the products, internationally recognized standards or norms, mostly coming from WHO, from time to time from ISO or other regulators or other harmonization initiatives. All these cover all the range of products that we have identified for you in the previous and which are recalled here. Next slide. What are the quality assurance requirements? I think we try to also simplify and articulate the requirement into different streams. The upstream and the downstream. Upstream is before it enters into the country, downstream is what is happening in the country. So these requirements are articulate with the selection, registration, procurement, and some pre-shipment activities. So it can be the clinical requirement based on the WHO treatment guideline, national treatment guideline, or diagnostic guideline. Registration and authorization by the products. Procurement entity, what kind of requirement they will have to comply and easily can make reference to the model quality assurance system for procurement agency. And in some case, for specific products, we may have some testing and inspection control requirements. Then we go to the country and the products reach the country and we have different requirements. I'm running out of time. Reporting, of course, there is a PQR system, good storage and distribution practice for what is happening in the country. Vigilance to provide feedback on quality, safety or efficacy issue, monitoring the quality, and after how we manage the waste of the products in the country. Next slide. Then I think I am all, and we can pass I can pass the button. Next slide. Yes, what is important is that now we enter into the point that the vision of the Global Fund Quality Assurance team is also to promote a kind of quality assurance system for the procurement supply management within the country. And for this, we are supporting, and we would like to support PR via different mechanisms. This is why a few years ago, we asked for the designation of a QA focal point, which should be the entry point for any quality assurance matter for the country team, HPM. We are promoting the implementation and the design of a limited number of standard operating procedure. And it will be up to the PR to decide to add or not. And we promote in the PSM guide a kind of plan that will describe all the process, the resource tool and partnership implemented by the PR to implement the QA requirements. And this is the objective also is to consider a risk-based approach in order to consider the country specificity. Not all countries are buying the same quantity, the same amount of money, the same type of products. So the risk-based approach is for us the solution to focus on the products which are the most at risk and to help, and we promote this principle to help the PR to decide to implement this system. Next. So I mentioned the quality assurance focal points. So I think this is something that all PR know already, but so this is the idea is to have a kind of privileged line of contact on QA matters, because QA, I think the devil is always in the details, and it's important to have someone who is knowledgeable. So we provide some kind of criteria for the designation of this focal point. And we also define is more or less terms of reference to liaise with the actors on quality, to support the Global Fund related investigation, in particular non-compliance, and to facilitate the reporting, in particular on non-compliance, adverse events, and quality control testing. That's the end of my part.
Thanks, Alain. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So now that Alain has a bit set the scene in which Global Funds, the environment in which Global Fund operates when it comes to the procurement of health products, I will go more into details about the different quality requirements that apply to the different health product categories. So next slide, please. So as you can see from these complex slides, the quality assurance policy framework at Global Fund covers the range of Global Fund finance health products. And we have 3 quality assurance policy, one for pharmaceutical products, one for medical devices, including in vitro diagnostic and personal protective equipment, and one for vector control products. And on this slide, you can see that for each of the different health product category, you can subdivide the product category into different categories. Like, for example, for medical device, you would have medical devices that are in vitro used and the ones that are not. So I won't go too much into details, but you can change the slide, please. So as you are probably all aware, we used to have a quality assurance policy for pharmaceutical products that was dated 2010. And we updated the policy. And here on this slide, we have summarized the main changes that apply to this policy. Basically, in a nutshell, what we did is that we have, let's say, included additional criteria for the eligibility of the product. For example, as mentioned by Alain, we have included products that are recognized by or authorized by a WLA authority within their scope of listing, and for HIV, TB, and malaria. We also authorize products that are recommended for use by WHO, an SRA, or a WLA authority during a public health emergency. And we also have, let's say, enlarged eligibility criteria when it comes to the expert review panel process, that now we also accept dossiers that are authorized or that have submitted, let's say, an evaluation to a WLA. There are certain requirements that need to be met for a product when it comes to the submission of an ERP dossier when the product has been submitted for review to a WLA. This is listed here. I won't go too much into details into the regulatory function now, but we can respond to some questions if you have any. In addition, there are some new provision in the QA policy for pharmaceutical products that we have mentioned that the Global Fund Secretariat can address any quality assurance issue on another basis when it comes to non-conformities or non-compliance. And we have a global committee that is, let's say, overseeing the implementation of the policy. Next slide, please. So if we go more into details now, you have here in red all the new changes to the QA policy for pharma versus comparison to the previous policy. So, for example, when it comes to the, first of all, this policy is applicable to any pharmaceutical product, any type of pharmaceutical product. So when it comes to the clinical requirements, we have now included an additional requirement, which is that we also recognize products that are recommended in WHO rapid communication. When it comes to the registration or marketing authorization, as just mentioned, we also recognize products that are authorized for use by a WLA, of course, within the scope of listing of this WLA authority. And as I just mentioned, also we accept products that are recommended for use in case of public health emergency. Next slide, please. So just to summarize, this has nothing to do with the policy, but the concept of WLA has already been mentioned several times during the start of this presentation. So I just want to give you a short information and also a link to a webpage to WHO. So basically, WHO has institutionalized the concept of WLA in order to move away from the definition of a stringent regulatory authority. And what it means that the WLA principle recognizes national regulatory authorities that meet certain WHO global benchmarks for regulatory oversight, ensuring that they have the capacity to regulate medical products effectively. And basically what this concept of WLA wants is this approach emphasizes a more inclusive framework for assessing the capabilities, let's say, of regulatory authority worldwide. So Global Funds, in line with WHO recommendation, has reflected this new concept and this new transition provision in the policy that we have developed. That's why you find next to the SRA definition and the concept of WLA. And I won't go into details, but if you want to understand how WHO assess regulatory authorities, you can go to the links that is mentioned on this slide, and it will explain all the concept and the requirements that the regulatory authority must meet. Next slide, please. So for the, we have also updated our QA policy for medical devices. The last policy was how do you say, issued in 2017 and was covering only in vitro diagnostic. Now, in November of last year, we have extended the coverage to all medical devices. So this policy includes now medical devices, in vitro diagnostic, and personal protective equipment. And similarly, to be harmonized across the different quality assurance policy, we also include the eligibility of procuring products that are authorized for use by a WLA within the scope of listing, and as well to include the provision to provide products that are recommended in case of an emergency during a public health emergency, let's say, sorry. So we have also specified that post-marketing surveillance are necessary and have expanded this requirement to all medical devices that would be procured with Global Funds money. So not only in vitro diagnostic, but any type of medical devices, including core protective personal protective equipment. And again, similarly to the quality assurance policy for pharma, we have also the same committee, Global Fund Committee, that oversee, let's say, the implementation of the policy. And the only difference with the previous policy on pharma, what we can say is that because previously the policy for, let's say, was only applicable to medical devices, and now we cover any type of medical device, we have also defined that there is the possibility to have a transitional period for the PR to transition, let's say, from a non-compliant anymore procurements that was done prior to the enforcement of this policy until the enforcement of the policy. So basically, if a PR is in a situation where they procure medical device that after implementation or enforcement of the QA policy for medical device is not compliant anymore, there is a possibility after discussion with global funds to, let's say, finish the procurement of this product. Next slide, please. So this is a complex slide, but it's just to show you and to explain when it comes to medical devices, there's something that needs to be bear in mind is that you can have a certain type of medical devices which can have a different intended purpose, and if based on this intended purpose, the classification according to the GHTF would be different. And this is a classification that we recognize and that is also mentioned in our care policy for medical devices. So for example, here it's not mentioned, but if I take the example of hematology cell counter, you can have an hematology cell counter that has a basic blood cell count without the diagnostic functions that would be classified as a class A medical devices, but you can have also very complex cell counter with critical diagnosis function to identify life-threatening condition and guiding an immediate treatment decision, which could be classified as a class D medical devices. So this is just to explain you that when it comes to procurement, we need really the information on the intended purpose from the medical devices to be sure that we can apply to this product the right quality assurance requirements in line with the requirements that are set in our policy for medical devices. Next slide, please. This is the same. I won't go too much into detail, but this is a concrete example where you see for a simple, simple medical device, personal lubricants, depending on the intended purpose, you can have different type of classification, even between a medical product and a non-medical product. Next slide, please. So again, I don't have so much time anymore. I just was told that I have 5 minutes remaining, so I won't go into details into this slide. But if you want, this is a kind of easy flow chart to help you, to guide you how to classify your medical devices based on their intended purpose and based on the type of approvals that it has. Next slide, please. So when it comes to the medical devices policy, again, here in red, you have all the new, let's say, changes that have been made to previous policy. We have changes that are applicable to the quality requirements that I say. Similarly to the pharma product, we recognize products that are recommended by rapid communication. We have a more stringent requirement for class C and D medical devices, and we authorize products that are recommended during a public health emergency. Next slide, please. So now we have elevated the requirements for personal protective equipment that were previously mentioned in the PSM guide to the policy. And this product applicability is it's for core PPE, condoms, and lubricants as well. Similarly, we have the same for PPE, we have the same quality requirements that the product needs to be either WHO pre-qualified or that is in line with the GHTF requirement or authorized for use by the WLA. And for condoms, we have, in addition to the three, we have the possibility to have a product that is recommended for use by the expert review panel. Next slide, please. So as you're probably aware, or maybe not yet, but you will be soon aware, we have a new policy for vector control products. And basically all the requirements for vector control products were previously reflected in the PSM guide. And we have now elevated this requirement into the policy. And here on this slide, you see basically the changes towards this requirement in comparison to what was as a requirement in the PSM guide for vector control product versus what is as a requirement for vector control product now in the policy. So what we can say is the policy now added the concept of inherent authorization and the country of use. We have revised the quality assurance standards in line with WHO. We have removed the RUPES quality standard, and we have added a selection criteria. We have explained the expert review panel process, which is also be soon available for the procurement of vector control products. We emphasize on the importance of quality monitoring and handling non-compliance for vector control products, and also the importance of monitoring insecticide resistance and the importance of how to manage waste related to vector control products. And similarly to the other policy, we have the same strategic committee at Global Funds that oversees the policy implementation. And we have also included the provision of transitional measure to accompany the transition for PR to comply with the new policy for this product. Next slide, please. So again, a summary in red, the changes that are applicable to vector control products. So I will be very quick. For clinical requirements, we have also included the possibility to recognize products that are recommended by WHO rapid communication on malaria. We have made as a requirement that the product, any vector control product, needs to be authorized by the national regulatory in the country of use. Next slide, please. We have added a selection criteria, meaning that if there are two products that are either WHO pre-qualified, the PR must select one of these products. If there's none or only one product that is pre-qualified, the PR has the possibility to consider procuring an expert product that has been assessed by the expert review panel. For transport, storage, and distribution, we recognize internationally guidance for good distribution and storage practices. And we have also elevated the requirements that was mentioned in briefing notes regarding pre-shipment inspection and sampling and testing of vector control products. That is a requirement for particular important for this category of health products. Next slide, please. And the additional requirements are regarding the supply chain monitoring, the monitoring of insecticide resistance, and as I mentioned before, the management of non-compliance and waste management. So we have put as a requirement that, again, I reiterate, insecticide resistance, waste management should be duly taken care of. And also that we have to, it's important to monitor, let's say, the supply chain when it comes to the distribution of vector control products in the country. I think I'm done. Thank you very much for your attention.
Amélie, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm handing over to Sandrine, who will present the rest of the presentation regarding procurement of health products. Thank you, Sandrine.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm not sure you see me, but anyway, I hope you can hear me. I take it as a yes. Amélie, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Can hear you, we can see you, Sandrine. It's perfect.
Excellent. Thank you. Then, yeah, this session will be, my name is Sandrine Chloé. I'm also part of the QA team. I'm specifically working on pharmaceuticals. Then this session will be for giving more detail on the expert review panel that has been mentioned by Amélie and also by Alain. to give some very high-level overview of best practice in procurement and GSDP, and some information on pre-shipment QC testing. Then starting with this slide, which is about ERP, ERP is a mechanism that has been put in place to contribute and to solve the bottleneck issue in terms of procurement. Indeed, in case there is less than 2 products that are either SRA, WLA approved or WPQ approved, we can use this ERP mechanism to do our own assessment of the product. In some circumstances, since it could be also more than 2, for instance, if the capacity of production of the eligible manufacturer is not meeting the demand, or if there are some restriction in some countries. The process is described here. We start with extensive consultation internally, but also with external partner to understand what products should be added and in the expression of interest call. This is based on public health need and also on the fact that there are few compliant QA products available on the market. After consultation, then we are publishing our call for expression of interest, and then manufacturers are invited to submit their product dossier to the Global Fund Secretariat. And this dossier, once received, will be transferred to the so-called expert review panel, which is a panel of experts, which is hosted by WHO. There are, as mentioned by Amélie, there are some eligibility criteria for a manufacturer to be eligible for proposing a product for ERP assessment. And this has slightly changed with the new QA policy because we have also to take into consideration the WLA. All these criteria are detailed in the term of reference that are published on our website if you need more information. Then the ERP will assess the dossier and will generate an abbreviated report and provide some recommendation or whether or not procurement should be authorized or not. This recommendation is valid only for 12 months because the objective is to have the product WHO PQ or SRA in a short term. Could be extended also in some circumstances. Together with this recommendation, there may be also mitigation measure recommended, could be QC testing, but not only. And then all the products that are recommended for use after ERP assessment are published on our QA eligibility. As mentioned by Amélie, this is currently implemented for pharmaceutical and IVD, but there is a plan for also using this mechanism for vector control. Next slide. What does it mean for you, PR, in terms of procurement? If you are intending to procure ERP, a product that is recommended by ERP, you need to notify the country team, HPM, and there are standard templates that you can use and that are on our website. This request will be shared by the HPM with us, the QA team at the Secretariat, and we will issue a non-objection letter. This letter is valid for 12 months, and then you can procure during this, any PO can be issued during these 12 months. Then if there is mitigation measure as quality control, which is most of the time the case for pharma, then before releasing the product, you will have to wait for the result that is performed, the QC testing is performed by a third-party lab. And then this is also QA who will provide you with the release later. There is possibility to organize a shipment under quarantine to save some time, meaning starting the transport, waiting for the testing result, and then the product will be quarantined at reception, waiting for the result of the QC testing. Next slide. As mentioned, I just want to mention this guideline, which is mentioned in our QA policy and also in the health product guide. then the peer should make sure that procurement is compliant with all the principles detailed in the Model Quality Assurance System for Procurement Agency, the MQAS. There are different modules describing this MQAS, the pre-qualification of product and manufacturer, purchasing, storage, and distribution, and some more. Then the procurement agent, that could be either a national procurement agent or UN agency or a PSA, for instance. All our PSA has been assessed against the MQAS for PPM. Then they should implement this MQAS either totally or partially, depending. For instance, in some case, pre-qualification is not required for instance, the product where we have stringent requirements. Next slide. Some information on pre-shipment inspection and control that are required as per our requirement, the Global Fund requirement, sorry. Then it depends of it's different according to the different category of product. Then for pharmaceutical product, QC pre-shipment QC testing will be required only for ERP product, and sometimes it can be waived, but most of the time it's required. For diagnostic, most of the time there is no pre-shipment QC testing, but it can happen. And in this case, it will be you will be aware. And for condom, PPE, and vector control product, there are also some random pre-shipment QC testing that are required, and we will see detail in the next slide. Nothing required for medical devices in general so far. Next slide. Don't know about the time. I don't want to go too much into details, but here you will see who is organizing the pre-shipment QC testing. Then for ERP product, that will be the Secretariat of the Global Fund. And for all the rest, which is not really linked to ERP, vector control, condom, and PPE, this will be either the principal recipient or the PSA. And you will see that most of the time, this is randomly, this is not 100% testing. You also can see that the laboratory, there are some, they need to be certified as per ISO 17025 for all of them. And for vector control could be a good laboratory practice approval only. And then the method to be used are also detailed in this table. Most of the time for ERP, we are testing against the approved methods because they are quite new product, and then there is in-house method most of the time is used. And then you have the ISO norms and CPAC norm for the rest of the product. You can just look at this table. I think it's quite clear. Next slide, and last slide for me. Storage and distribution. And I will be short because I need to hand over to Stefan. PR should also make sure that any sub-recipient or any contractor agent that are doing some storage and distribution should comply with the WHO Good Storage, Distribution and Practices. And the best practices can be assessed by, for instance, regular independent audit that could be organized by the PR. I will hand it, and then I will hand over for Stefan for post-market surveillance, if I'm not wrong. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks, Sandrine. I hope you can hear me. My name is Stephen Kimatu. I'm part of the QA team, basically handling vector control products. Next slide, please. So as indicated by Hameli and Alan before, PRs are expected to monitor the quality of the products which have been procured with the Global Fund resources within the supply chain. So PRs are expected to come up with a quality monitoring plan to make sure that they carry out the quality assessment for these products within the supply chain. The range of products which is supposed to have the post-marketing surveillance, once you look at the list, is basically all. And of course, the PRs are responsible for this. Please note that some of the products, especially the ERP-reviewed products, may also have additional risk mitigation measures, and therefore PRs are required to also implement those risk mitigation measures as well. Next slide. So when it comes to post-marketing surveillance and quality control, of course, these PRs are supposed to come up with a quality monitoring plan, not just an ad hoc, collection of samples and testing. And therefore, as a country or as a PR, you need to have a plan in place on how you carry out your post-marketing requirements as indicated by the Global Fund. Of course, your post-marketing surveillance, they need to be effective, sustainable, and also adequate. Alan indicated this earlier, that you need to have a collaboration with the National Regulatory Authority. Usually post-marketing surveillance is a regulatory function, and therefore you need to work closely with the regulatory authority and also other relevant actors in the country. The other relevant actors, in this case, we expect the disease programs, we expect the Minister of Health, in particular the department handling health products. We also expect the National Quality Control. This is key because the products will have to be tested there for the compendial testing. And of course, if there are any partners within the country who also doing these post-marketing surveillance, you also need to bring them in to, sort of benefit from the synergies. It has indicated before that you need to use risk-based approaches when you are selecting your products, as well as when you are doing the verification or testing activities. Therefore, when you're selecting your products, you need to look at several products characteristics, the products which are at risk, especially if their manufacturing is complex, if they are low therapeutic index or they have higher risk to patients. And of course, when you are doing the verification exercise, you need to use a risk-based approach where you can have several labels where, for example, you can use visual inspection, and then you can use some screening technologies before you go to compendial testing. Of course, I've indicated this, you need to strategize on how you implement the verification activities. So visual inspection, you can opt for partial or full testing, and we have very good guidelines on how to implement these activities by WHO and by the United States Pharmacopoeia. We have a document risk-based approach on how to implement post-marketing surveillance. Of course, all the post-marketing surveillance activities, these ones need to be reported to the Global Fund Secretariat and also to the NRA. Of course, the NRA is part of the post-marketing surveillance team, and therefore that's critical for the NRA to follow up. Of course, costs for conducting quality control activities must be budgeted within the Global Fund grant. And of course, Alan indicated that as part of the regulatory system strengthening, Global Fund resources can be used to improve competencies in this area to the NRA. Next slide. So I say designing, you need to come up with a good sampling and testing program, which you need to collaborate with the NRA and the other stakeholders using the risk-based criteria. In terms of sample collections, you need to select and contract a sampling agent. In some instances, we have good inspectors within the NRA who have been involved in sampling and products, so you can also use that. Sandrine did indicate that we need these products to be tested in labs which are either WHO pre-qualified or ISO certified. And of course, when it comes to the sampling of the products, you need to look along the whole supply chain from the central medical stores up to the end user. Key to this is how you transport the samples from where they have been picked until to the QC lab. And this is to ensure that the products quality or the sample quality is not affected before they get to the QC lab. If there are any products which require method transfer as part of the QC testing, this is good to make sure that that is handled even before the samples get to the QC lab. Of course, if there are any out of specification or non-compliance, this needs to be handled together with the National Regulatory Authority, but we also expect this to be reported to the Global Fund as well. And of course, for all your activities on quality monitoring or post-marketing surveillance, we need that report to Global Fund and make sure that records or documentation for those activities are also kept. Of course, any non-compliance needs to be reported to the regulatory authority and to the Global Fund QA team through the country team, of course. Next slide. Pharmacovigilance is also another requirement which we expect PRs to implement. Next slide. So we strongly encourage NRS to work with, PRs to work with NRS to report adverse reactions and also defects on the products. Therefore, most of the NRAs have a program in place. We therefore recommend to use that program to report either adverse effects or quality defects. And of course, support if we are doing any investigation, we expect the PRs to support the Global Fund Secretariat and also the NRA. And of course, we expect regular updates once you carry out any investigations or any reports you have made to the NRA. Next slide. So once we look at what are the requirements for a pharmacovigilance center, which is supposed to be within the NRA, we are looking at a center with, a national pharmacovigilance system center within the NRA with the designated staff. There's funding with very clear mandates. Of course, there needs to be a method of reporting ADRs, and therefore the National Spontaneous Reporting System has to be in place, and also there are ADR reporting forms. Of course, a national database of what has been reported and how the NRA manages that. And of course, the National Pharmacovigilance Advisory Committee. This is basically to look at the ADRs reported and do things like actuality assessment, risk assessment, and of course, there needs to be a clear communication strategy for routine communication of that ADRs to the public and of course to the healthcare workers. Of course, for any pharmacovigilance, as Alan said, PRs can also budget for this to strengthen pharmacovigilance activities within the NRS. Next slide. So basically, for any non-compliance and out of specification, we need to have this reported within the Global Fund Secretariat. And this is for us basically to be able to give adequate information, support where necessary within your investigation. And also, we need to know what activities have you taken at the country level. Of course, we need support when, like, for example, we are doing our investigations, and also we require the PRs to implement an advice that we have already issued. And of course, if you are carrying out any investigations, regular updates also required to be reported to the Global Fund QA Secretariat. Next slide. So when you're doing your reporting, we require a reporting form. We are able to develop Global Fund specific reporting forms, and therefore PRs can also use the forms which are used by the national regulatory authorities. Of course, the key information we require to be indicated in those forms is, of course, once we develop our own forms, we'll have a title, where the origin of the report or who is reporting, so that we can have information in case we need to reconnect for further investigations. Of course, the product details and what is the extent of the problem. So whether it's one batch, several batches, and what is the problem. Is it a quality issue or is it a safety issue? Of course, the nature of defects, actions that have already been taken. Of course, the preliminary or the immediate is basically to quarantine the product as the investigations are already being carried out. And of course, any supporting information is welcome, so that when you're submitting this information, of course, certificate of analysis, if it's an out of specification. And of course, we shall have a privacy statement whereby the data that is shared by the Global Fund we can still, or we give the leeway to be able to use that data. Next slide. So I'll hand over to my colleague, Zipporah, who will take you through the healthcare waste management. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Zipporah Muideri. On healthcare waste management, I think we can all agree that as long as there are healthcare activities, waste is going to be generated, and it is important that implementers manage this waste with public health and the environment in mind. And of course, with the kind of activities going on, you expect to have different types of waste. You may have pharmaceutical waste, you may have cytotoxic waste, and many other types. And with this comes different types of approaches that countries can adopt or implementers can adopt to manage the different types of waste. So with this, there are several documents that have been developed to kind of highlight what are some of the best approaches for which type of waste. And these resources are available in the references section. So you will be able to access these materials. You will also be able to see some case studies of how other countries have which approaches they have taken, which ones have worked, and what lessons they have learned. What is important to mention here is that as you choose or develop or improve an approach, it's important to comply with the applicable laws and the relevant regulations of the country that you're implementing the program, and of course, requirements that may be put forward for conserving or managing the environment. Next slide, please. So I will now take you through price and quality reporting, because as you may already know, for certain categories of products, they have to be reported through the price and quality reporting platform provided by the Global Fund. And so which are these categories of products? So one, we have pharmaceutical products, that is ARVs, anti-malarials, anti-TBs, hepatitis C, and anti-hepatitis C pharmaceuticals. Diagnostic products, such as those for testing HIV, TB, malaria, and core infections such as syphilis, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. Laboratory equipment for diagnostic purpose, condoms, surgical and non-surgical masks and respirators, medical devices, and specifically here we are talking about Class C and Class D medical devices, and vector control products, and that is insecticide-treated nets and indoor residue sprays. So those are the categories that are required to be reporting on the PQR platform, which I'll be touching on in the next slide. But you may already know or asking yourself who is responsible for doing the reporting. So this depends on the procurement channel. So if the principal recipient procures the health products directly on their own, or their procurement service agents, then they're responsible for entering this data in PQR. And if they have procured through PPM or pooled procurement mechanism, or through the WAMBO platform using Global Fund resources, then the Global Fund's procurement service agent is responsible for, sorry.
Deborah, I think we lost you, and we lost.
Sorry, yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, so I just mentioned that if you're using the PPM mechanism or the pooled procurement mechanism on the WAMBO platform using Global Fund resources, then the Global Fund's procurement service agent is the one who is responsible for entering this data in PQR. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, thank you. So the PQR platform is, as you can see, and the information that you need to enter relates to the products, the supplier, the procurement transaction, and certain documents as well. For example, the certificate of analysis and the test reports. And how do you enter this data? This step-by-step guide on how to do the data entry is outlined in what we call the PQR guide. It's also available in the references section. So the Global Fund utilizes this information to verify compliance with the QA policy requirements, and also for traceability of the health products procured using Global Fund resources. So I will stop there and hand over to Aude, who is going to take us through the next sections. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah, and thank you to all presenters. So before we move to the Q&A, we will now launch a short survey that will pop up on your screen. We would appreciate if you could take a minute to fill it in. Your feedback is very valuable for us. Thank you. And we will shortly close the survey. Thank you very much for all attendees who are answering right now. This is just to confirm that we will then move to the Q&A session. So please bear with us. Thank you. Sorry, we're going to close the questions, the survey now, and move to the first questions in the Q&A. Thanks again for all the participation to the survey. So the first question has already been addressed. Yes, so we will share the presentation and the recording on the website, and the presentation are actually already shared on the website. I will now move to question 2 from Ajay. Looking at the increased importance of AI for the detection of diseases along with the purchase of medical equipment and device, in some countries, software treated as SAMD, for example, in India, the software used in the detection of a disease has to be approved by CDSCO under the category SAMD. What are the international regulations for such AI softwares?
Thanks. I think this is a very complex area. What we can say is that we have already developed a guidance document to, sorry, I received a message which disturbed. So we have already issued a guidance document on CAD for TB that should be revised because it is not fully in line with the QA policy now. So yes, some of the software can be registered and authorized by the different country if they have a medical purpose as a medical device. So this is considered in the new policy for medical device, and the classification is also based on GHTF, ex-GHTF classification. So the regulation probably is not fully harmonized between Europe and USA, but we rely on the different classification of the regulator that we have captured. And I would encourage you to look at the guidance document as soon as they will be revised and published. I think we have to be concise in the answer and try to go. How many questions do we have?
26.
We have 26 questions, so we're going to move to question 3. As PRs in a grant, in the Global Fund grant, as a PR in the Global Fund grant, the MQAS requires us to conduct GMP audits of our suppliers if we are procuring directly. This includes auditing the GMP. Can this check be removed if we are relying on a Global Fund WHO list of approved manufacturers? And if so, who is liable in the case of a recall or quality safety issue at manufacturer level? Global Fund or principal recipients, if we as a PR are relying on the QA registration from Global Fund sites?
On the MQS, I think I can ask Sandrine if she is available to provide some elements for the answer. My just remark is that suppliers are always the primary responsible person of their products in case of issue or quality. Sandrine, you are here?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, on the MQS, I think this question, all questions are complex, but I mean, as you know, that if you have what you need to comply with is the QR Global Fund QR requirement, then if it's ARV from pharmaceutical, for instance, ARV, TB, malaria, you will not have to redo GMP, of course, because the product is WPQ or SRA approved when you comply with QA policy. Then I guess this is maybe for essential medicine, and in this case, you can rely also on GMP, WHO, etc. But I mean, there is possibility in MQS if it's the question to rely on other authority and other GMP inspection, that's for sure.
Thank you. Another query is if there are international global certification like SRA, etc., which according to the Global Fund are mandatory. However, when it comes to the procurement of such items, these international certifications are not required in the buyer country. However, different sets of certifications are required as per country requirements like CDSCO. In such scenario, what are the best way to proceed for preparation of the RFP documents? To follow the buyer country certifications or global quality compliance certifications? As follow, both become tough and also restrict competition in the local market.
Okay, quickly, global certification like SRA. SRA is not a certification to some extent. The other international, I would say, framework which has been set up is the one issued by WHO, on the WHO listed authority, but it's not per se a certification. Second is the contradiction maybe between the QA requirement and the national requirement. I think at the time of the negotiation and for the grant funding, I think there is clear the obligation for the PR to implement quality assurance requirements. So here, maybe I can ask for the support for one country, HPM, that can help in this kind of contradiction. But I don't really see how we can derogate to QA requirement. Is there any HPM that will be willing to enter? Yes? No?
Maybe we can park the question for the moment.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
And ask if HPM can address later or in the chat. And move to question 5. Is the QA focal point mandatory, considering the continuous efforts and advices of the Global Fund on QA requirements? Any experience from the Global Fund supported countries?
The Global Fund is the we are supporting the HPM and the country team for the designation by the PR. So yes, here it would be interesting to have from the country team or the HPM on how they achieve to identify and to select the global QA focal point from the PR side. HPM?
Alain, I think I can take that if that's okay. From the Global Fund perspective, the importance of having the focal point is really to have somebody who will make sure all QA-related issues do not fall through the cracks. As you know, they say everybody's work is nobody's work. And, you know, if all these QA notices are sent in country, we have guidelines being issued and nobody to carry it forward, it's very easy for it to just fall through the cracks. So basically, having this focal is to coordinate QA efforts, make sure all information that is sent to the country reaches the right officials and is followed through. So, thank you.
Next.
Thank you. So can the Global Fund QA unit support the PR in determining their QAS as in determining if the QS is appropriate?
So yes, the QA team is here to support. The fact is that all the PR requests should pass through the country team and the HPM, which is their primary contact point. But we are happy to support, and that can be also an help to identify the weakness that we may have in our current guidance document. Over.
Is any product from WLA included in latest Global Fund eligible product list for TB, ARV, and malaria?
I will ask Sandrine, maybe because she's managing the list of eligible products for pharmaceuticals. Sandrine?
Yes, thank you, Alain. As you know or may not, the WLA list is, for the moment, most of them are the SRA, already the former SRA authorities. Then I would say yes, because we have some products that have been listed based on SRA approval. But I mean, this is not linked to the WLA. Then I would say no new product based on WLA, like the authority which are not SRA listed are South Korea and Singapore, if I'm not wrong, and we haven't included product registered by these authorities so far. Over.
Is there any list of Global Fund eligible QC lab for testing of PPE, same as for pharmaceutical products?
Not sure. Maybe Amélie, as you were working for the PPE markets.
So we have some labs that we have identified and used to test PPE. We can share them with you, but a list as such, I need to ask our colleague who's responsible for medical device. Charles, do you have in mind to make a list for this lab as well or not? I don't know if she's online.
Yes. I had to unmute and activate the camera. Just to keep it short, I'm currently focusing on creating a Global Fund eligible list for CAT and X-ray devices. This is in the pipeline. The QC, the list for QC labs for PPE. I have to discuss it more internally. When this will happen, I cannot promise. But this is in discussion.
But if you want to have some list, you can address your request to your country team or HPM, and we can share with you the list of the labs that we have used. Yep. And this could be a temporary solution.
Yes.
Thank you both. If the product is in the Global Fund list, does it mean that we do not need any other quality proof? Since no ARVs or ATDs are registered in Georgia, national regulatory cannot be used for assessment of quality. Which institutions are regarded as WHOLA?
I will keep it. No, it doesn't mean that you don't have to consider the list of eligible products is for indicative purpose, because as you can imagine, it can easily change from one day to another. So as soon as you will decide, you can look at the list, but I would encourage you to make some cross-check and check for some evidence that the product is still available or authorized. Yes, on the second part of the question, I think some national regulatory authority don't have the experience competence to assess new ARV or TB products. The institution that are WHO listed authority, they are available on the WHO webpage, but we are currently drafting a guidance document to help the principal recipient to navigate within this list and to identify if the decision from this listed authority can be considered or not. So we envisage to publish this, let's say, in 2 months.
In case we decide to go for post-delivery quality check and the gloves fail in the quality check on certain parameters, and if we decide to go for the retesting with different labs and it passes, should we pay to the vendor or write to the Global Fund for approvals before payment to the vendor?
Maybe I can take this question.
If you want, Emily, take it.
Yeah. So first of all, it depends who recommended to do the testing for the product. So if it was part of post-market surveillance, and so you have first to check if it's in line with, let's say, with the standards that are used, because we had the cases where the product were tested not according to the specification of the manufacturer. So we have difficulties to assess the results when it's not in line with the product specification. So you need, I would suggest, if it's for procurement main using Global Fund grants, to check with the country team, with your HPM, before doing any additional testing. Yes, definitely, yes.
Thanks, Amélie. So next question, when would the new updated policies going to be released?
They're already published on the Global Fund webpage. Okay. And we should have the list of the reference document at the end of the presentation with the link to the webpage, if I remember well.
Thanks. Yes, indeed. You will find the list in the PowerPoint, while in the presentation that is shared on the info session page, and from there you can move to all the policies. Do all PRs must do random batch tests in eligible QC lab for testing in any of their products, or is there a potential waiver in some contexts? For example, humanitarian responses.
I think here what I would like to recall, simply not to go into the detail, is what we call the risk-based approach. So in this respect, I think this is here the reasoning that the PR should perform to identify where are the main risk, what are the products which are the main risk from a quality, safety, and efficacy perspective, and then to test. So here, there is no formal obligation to test all the products. It's not possible virtually. But using a risk-based approach is the best mechanism. It should be demonstrated, I would say describe, and after we can discuss the reasoning behind, but I think it is the approach that we would like to take. Over.
How to find the content of the abbreviated product?
The abbreviated product dossier, I don't know really what it means.
Yeah, maybe I can take it because
yes.
I remember this is me mentioning. This is not available. This is in the context of ERP. This is a product dossier assessment that is shared from ERP to us, and this is not shared with anyone else. This is confidential. I hope I answer. This is related to what I said on ERP.
Yes, okay. I think just to add in we investigate with the double show to what extent we can share this report with other national regulatory authority, and probably we have to refresh the discussion to see to what extent the NRA can take benefit of this report, because there is need for confidential arrangement below this. Over. The letter validity time, sorry.
How can we know about a letter validity time?
Maybe for Sandrine also?
So maybe this is the NOL. It's true that we said the NOL is valid for 12 months. You will know with the date of issue when we issue the NOL, and you add 12 months, but you also need to consider the validity of the ERP, and this is indicated on the Q eligibility list. Over.
So I'm seeing that questions 15 and 17 are both regarding resources. So yes, we have already the presentation slides on the website, and we're gonna share the recordings. And we're gonna paste in the chat now the link where you can access these. So I'm moving to question 16. As PR, are we required to always follow a QC testing by Global Fund, or can we do our own QC testing?
I would say it depends of the products. Some products need to have a kind of mandatory quality control testing performed, but it can be performed by us or by the PR, depending on the procurement channel. After, if the PR want to perform his own QC testing on Global Fund products, I think it is something that can happen. But what we ask is that this quality monitoring, let's say, activity should be performed as mentioned before, some kind of risk-based approach, some kind of logic, and after following the method which are and the specification which have been approved by the regulators. So there is some criteria that we ask if it is to be used with Global Fund funds, of course.
Thank you. Is there any Global Fund guidelines in pipeline or in-country quality monitoring of IVD, especially for RDTs, malaria, HIV, etc., same as pharmaceutical products?
That in the pipeline, when it will be published is another story. But yes, there is definitively also the need, and we received the request from some countries, and that we will have to satisfy. Over.
So we're going to take another slide before, because we are slowly reaching the end of the session. Is WHO GDP, GSP with the same requirements for the medical devices?
So I cross-checked with during the presentation. I think the WHO GDP is applicable to medical products. And if you look at the definition of medical products, you have pharmaceuticals, but you have also medical device. So yes.
What do you mean by method transfer in QA monitoring?
Sandrine?
No, Alain, but as I mentioned it, so maybe I will clarify. This is for QC testing when the manufacturer is using a method which is not in the pharmacopoeia, published in the pharmacopoeia, then they will use their in-house method. And when you ask a third-party testing to test as per in-house method, you need the method to be transferred. Then there will be some, just to make sure that the third-party lab testing is able to use this method and to perform as per the manufacturing method. Hope it's clear.
Thanks, Sandrine. Availability of reference standards for quality control testing is a challenge to MRAs. Will the Global Fund QA team provide support in these instances?
Yes, we can provide support, but what I would encourage is at the time of the planning and the budgeting, the PR has to consider the cost of this reference standards. In some case, only the supplier can provide the reference standards or the standards, but mostly this can be procured. It is a very heavy cost, and this should be planned and considered in the budget.
I'm aware that where NRAs lack capacity for QA testing, samples are taken to other WHO regional collaboration centers for QA testing. Oh, sorry, it was a comment. And so we're going to take one more questions. And for those participants whose question hasn't been addressed, we suggest that you email us at infosession@globalfund.org. And we will respond to your questions in writing if we had enough time to address it online or now. So WHO lists in their pre-qualified product list, FPPs, etc., that they have qualified them in principle, but it's up to the procurement agency to validate and ensure due diligence is completed to address safety and quality QA requirements under NQAS. This requires another set of validation by the PRs to assume responsibility under QA and not solely rely on WHO pre-qualification lists. Does this align with Global Fund perspective?
Unfortunately, I think we don't have the time to answer this, but I would say yes and no, because from my perspective, and this is something that we can discuss later on, it is not the job of the procurement agent to reassess the quality, safety, and efficacy of the products they are procuring. So my answer is I'm not fully aligned, but this is something that probably the QA team can provide a more comprehensive answer. I think you have missed the 21.
So I'm aware that where an areas lack capacity for QA testing, samples are taken to other WHO regional collaboration centers for QA testing. Do you want to add on?
The only thing that we can say is that, yes, the PR should have access to a lab. It can be a national or local lab, or it can be a lab which is located outside. We are aware that there is some regional initiatives and regional collaboration of quality control lab, and we all encourage the country and PR to participate in this and to take benefit of this regional collaboration, which is emerging a little bit everywhere. I think we can stop now, maybe.
Thank you. Yes, so thank you very much. So we suggest that for all questions that remain unanswered, to email them to us. We're gonna paste the address to email us in the chat now. And before we close, we wanted to thank you all for your participation today and all the presenters and interpreters also for their support. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to everybody, all the participants and the team. Bye-bye.
Bye.